today. We're talking about government and politics, but this year things will be different as it relates to voting for those who are in college, and maybe if they're 18 and they're in high school. Let's talk about some of those things that they will see. How is it so different this year?
Well, first of all, it's going to be an exciting year to be able to say this is your potentially your first election you're voting in, or your first presidential election you're voting in, just because it's such a high stakes election, but also because there's so many abnormalities that are in effect here. We're seeing all over the nation basically a patchwork system of rules and laws in place for this election that change from state to state in terms of how one is to vote, what the acceptable forms of voting are, whether it's voting by mail, absentee, in person. And so the one pitfall that younger voters or first time voters have this time around is they also have to navigate that element of it, the uncertainty of it and the confusion caused by all the states essentially creating their own set of rules. And this is maybe maybe this is a discussion for after the election. Once all this is over and we have to start thinking about how we manage the next election. This is one really tricky and complicated part about American politics in general, is our system of federalism. We don't truly have national elections. Elections are managed by the states and the county governments. And so that's what accounts for the fact that we have all these states with a completely different patchwork system of rules in place for this election, given everything that's happened around us. But it exposes something that makes this very confusing for people.
Right, and we have the coronavirus, aka the COVID-19, that's we're still in a pandemic. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
What should students expect this year with this election, with the coronavirus? We were talking on the phone yesterday, and we were talking about how some of the polling stations, they may not have as many poll workers as they're used to having because of the coronavirus. So let's talk about some things that they can expect once they go to those polling stations.
So let me start by saying, and this is maybe one of the most frequently misunderstood things that are available to college students who are voting. If you are a college student and you live on campus, you're a campus resident, under federal law dating back to the 70s, you are permitted to register and vote using your school address, meaning you don't have to then drive home to where mom and dad live. You don't have to go through the absentee voting process. You can register to vote at school and vote at the nearest polling place. And since we're in the Jackson metro area, I'll give you an example of that. If you're a Jackson State student, it's as easy as registering to vote, and your polling place, if you live on campus at Jackson State, is on campus. So there are certain things. So, and if you're a student in Midtown at Millsaps, your polling location is behind campus on West Street. Off of West Street at the Good Samaritan Center. If you're a student in Jackson at Bellhaven, I believe their polling place is also located directly on campus. So
it's kind of a convenience thing.
It's a convenience thing. And so normally what I do when talking to college students about this, that's the route I suggest that they take, just for the convenience and to make sure that there's no excuse for getting their vote in. But here's where things change again this year because of the coronavirus, as you noted. There's a possibility, as we're seeing in other states, schools shutting down physical operation early. They're sending students online. They're sending some students home early. This means that if a student in Mississippi registers at school, they can only be registered in one place. So if they are sent home unexpectedly, they're then going to have to apply for their absentee ballot at school. So This year is going to be far more complicated. And if I can add, I'm a member of the board of directors of an organization here in Mississippi. There's a chapter in each of the states called Common Cause. And one of the things we do is promote voter registration and turnout in a bipartisan way. And one of our focal points is college students and younger voters. And we have a program that we participate in along with several other states called the Democracy Fellowship Program. And what we're doing for the third year now in Mississippi is Millsaps College, Jackson State, University of Southern Mississippi, and the University of Southern Mississippi's Gulf Park campus have funds from this fellowship that come from money raised by that organization It's not government money. It's money that's raised by the organization to hire a student on each campus to be the voter coordinator, basically to get students information, how to register, where to register, what you need to have with you to go to the polls, how you complete if you need an absentee ballot, how to do that. And then on election day, if a student goes to the polls and they're not in the books like they should be, they go to them to then help them sort it out. So we're actually in the process now through our organization of figuring out how to train our democracy fellow students who are their job is to help all the other students get their votes cast. And so we're actually looking now at what are the best avenues for making this work because of the absentee rules. And there's one, I want to mention this for the viewers because this is extremely important. You have probably read on social media or talked to relatives maybe that live in other states, and they're telling you about how easy it is for them to vote by mail this year. That is not the case in Mississippi. The Mississippi legislature did not go the route that I think we needed to with making vote by mail possible. You still have to produce an excuse for why you're not going to be able to vote in person on election day and request a traditional absentee ballot. The only difference that I can see in the law right now is with a doctor's note, one can claim that there's a coronavirus reason for why you're claiming that you can't physically go vote. But in other states, it's made easier. Anybody can vote by mail if they're registered and not have to go through all the hoops. So I just want Mississippi voters, especially first-time voters who this is new for them, to know that even though their friends and relatives in other states might be doing the vote by mail thing that's going to be convenient and safe to do, that's not an option in Mississippi. And I don't want anyone to be confused by that.
And so things with all of that, things seem like they could possibly get discouraging for first-time voters and even those who have already voted.
Yeah.
How can we move away from seeing all of these things that we're up against on the day of election to move towards not being discouraged?
That's a terrific question. And I could give you one really clear example of this. Last fall, in the November election here in Mississippi, we had about 20 students that we registered to vote at Millsaps College turned away at their polling place. They went to vote, and it was, in fact, the only reason the public knew about this is WJTV and Alex Love broke the story on the news. and so so you all on your station went and interviewed some of these students and got us an answer. So I want to thank you all for that. But also what happened was these were first-time voters. They registered. We even had the photocopies of their forms as proof. And what happened is they showed up. They were told, you're not on the books. They sent them away. And we found out later that they were the poll workers were given an outdated copy of the list. And so these things unfortunately happen. So there are all kinds of things we need to do to make things not just easier, but more clear. And one of those things being we desperately need, I think, in the United States to be looking at not just a Mississippi issue, but how do we make things a little more uniform so the voter in Alabama and the voter in Mississippi don't have these truly different experiences to the point of it becoming excessively confusing. But there's unfortunately, nothing we can do right now for this election on this because the ship has sailed.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. And again, to reiterate, that could be possibly discouraging for, either first-time voters or those who have already voted. Because some people, what I've realized is some people don't even understand the process as far as registering to vote. And once they're registered, what's the process after that? And so trying to get them informed about registering and make sure you're registered. And after you're registered, make sure you're in position to go vote on this day, how to get there, where your location is, so again, that could be discouraging. What advice for those who will see this, what advice would you give as a government and politics department at Millsaps? What would you, professor, what advice would you give them?
I would give them this advice. Start making a plan for yourself right now for how you're going to get your vote in. So in other words, we may have Mississippi students who go to college in Mississippi, but their parents live in, say, Louisiana, they're going to need to decide, do they want to register to vote here in Mississippi for this election? Or do they want to register back home? And if they're going to vote out of state, they need to know how to get their ballots. So this is going to require, especially this year, maybe a little more research than usual to make sure your vote's counted. But here's the most important thing I would say. Again, make a plan right now from start to finish. I'm going to make sure I'm registered today. I'm going to request, if I need one, an absentee ballot immediately, so it's in the record that I've requested it. And then as soon as I get that absentee ballot, I'm going to do it and send it back, following all the rules, because just don't wait. Do it as soon as you get it. And what I would tell the students who are living in places maybe outside of Mississippi that have vote by mail, don't hesitate when you get your ballot. It's better to fill it out sooner and get it in, so that you know that you've done your part. Don't wait. That's going to be if you need to vote absentee or by mail, don't wait. But also make sure you're registered, because some states this is another thing. Some states are making it a little easier to register up until close to the election. Mississippi's still 30 days before. So if you're not registered 30 days before Mississippi, you can't vote in this election. And so I don't want anyone to be confused by that. And I do think, as you correctly mentioned, Marcus, I think there's a recipe for more confusion than usual this time.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for your time today. And